These people believe that NASA is putting man in space. They have no intentions of it. And you can see that. We've been over a decade. The space shuttle system, last one was 2011. They're not interested in putting anybody into space. They don't have a manned spacecraft. And then they're farming it out to somebody else. Well, they can't even get off the ground. I mean, the guidance system, I'm talking about that restored guidance system that they're demonstrating. Why don't they just give it to Musk? I mean, he's got the newest and latest and greatest systems on it, and we watched it go up there, and the only thing that works on his computer software is that unexpected rapid disassembly of equipment. That piece of his equipment works almost perfectly. He's demonstrated how well it works. Those machines, they blow up so fast, you can't even find the pieces, And of course, he had a little extra one on the last one with the launch pad going through the car. That was just a bonus. If this guidance system works, why isn't he using it? Because it worked better and faster and have confirmed repeated results to get to the moon and back.
Yeah, but all they have to do is build a window or place a window somewhere in that spacecraft so they can just bring a sextant along, and that way they can navigate there and back. You don't need a computer for that because Apollo never used one. Really, in reality, really. That system that they used was just nothing but a gyroscope to keep the craft on course. And that reminds me of the old 737s. That's why they used to have those two windows above the pilot's head, because that was for a sextant so that you could shoot the stars for the navigator. Of course, they don't have them anymore because we have GPS and everything else. But that almost reminds me of the ludicrousy of Apollo, the way they did that. Are you kidding me?
None of the stuff they've got now has gotten anywhere a couple of miles off the ground. That's all they've ever done since then, right? With man, whatever, on their so-called steps to getting to the moon.
The one that was in the 737s at the shop, that was called an astro compass, because when I took commercial flight, we had to learn how to use that piece of equipment.
But they have all of this equipment, and they spent all the time and money and energy, so-called, to restore it. And if there was any faults in it, they would have corrected that after 50 years when they're restoring all of this equipment. So if they've got it all, use it. Taxpayer paid a hell of a lot of money to restore that equipment. Why not use it? That command center should work for any rocket that they put up. Never mind that it's already fully compatible and proven that it worked by their standards for that guidance system to get them to the surface of the moon, back off again, and reconnect. That's a real mystery, that one. How you can get back in there with an engine that goes full throttle, no controls on it, not gimbaled, not anything, and manage to get even close to that other machine at 6,000 miles an hour. I mean, it's just unbelievable that all of that stuff, but that's what they claim. Well, go ahead and do it. You've got the equipment. You've restored the equipment. Go ahead and do it. We'll give you till Christmas time. How's that?
They can't do it because they couldn't do it the first time. So they had to fake it. And they did fake it, and they faked it very effectively. And we all saw it on television. And that was the key to it. Because it was on television, we tend to believe it. If something appears on television, it's considered to be realistic and real and should be believed. Now, if you can fake reality, you can do anything you like. NASA managed to fake landing humans on the moon. Aside from all the problems of getting there, to actually get humans onto the lunar surface and then show them on film, on television, walking around on the lunar surface, that's an incredible achievement. Well, it seems an incredible achievement because we can imagine how difficult it would be to get there. And I'm sure that NASA came up with a lot of problems that they would encounter. So how are they going to resolve those problems, such as getting the rockets to land on the lunar surface, and then, as you say, to get them off again and link up with a command module in orbit at 6,000 miles an hour? That's an incredible achievement to do that. But if you can show it on film, people will believe you.
Well, it reminds me of that satellite dish that was on Apollo 12 on the LEM. When it came up to dock and that dish went clunk, flopped over.
Yeah.
Well, some of the proponents are claiming that, well, yeah, it would do that because they're still in lunar gravity. But here's the thing. Okay, they're in lunar gravity. That's quite interesting. Well, then why are the people floating around in the ship? In other words, what I'm saying is the guy that's taking, whoever is inside of that command module holding that camera is floating. You can see that in the reflection of the window. So
Yep.
if he's floating in that command module, then how's that dish all of a sudden just go clunk like this and then fall down if it's supposed to be in gravity? Well, then that would mean that that fellow that's taking the video or the film of that dish, that limb, he would not be floating.
He would not be
He would
floating.
also fall.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing I never heard about that one with the antenna wobbling around like that, they could have claimed it got hit by a micrometeor, and they don't do that.
No.
I mean, that would have been a good enough excuse saying, oh, it got hit.
But as that antenna flops down, it appears to be in Earth's gravity. But it moves relatively fast. If it was in lunar gravity, it would be much slower. It's about a quarter the speed.
It's just hanging off a wire. That's all, in a hangar. And
Yeah.
probably at Menlo.
It probably is. Or at Cardington airship hangars in the UK, which is where some of it was supposed to have been filmed. Because it needs something as big as an airship hangar to have the distance to create the background. All right, some of it would have been done with miniature models. That famous picture from Apollo 14 showing the sunlight casting a shadow on the lunar lander and then a shadow on the rocks in the foreground, that would almost certainly be a model. We've seen pictures of models on what look like the lunar surface, and it's very easy to do that. I mean, perspective is a problem, but if you can overcome the difficulty of the lens showing the perspective and create it as if it was in reality, you got a completely different story. So if those pictures were all of models and mannequins and maybe radio controlled models, but it's interesting how often you see the astronaut in such a picture in exactly the same physical position from one picture to another, indicating that they're using a mannequin, moving him, so the background changes, but the astronaut mannequin doesn't. It's basically a problem of continuity.
The other thing where they definitely were using the models were the orbital photographs when they're shooting it. And Robert and I were looking at some of them the other day, and then all of a sudden it just changes and the shadows are exactly in the opposite direction. They're still traveling the same way. They're still traveling the same way in the orbital, and it just goes to this next, I guess it was a cutter, they had to put another tape in or whatever, but it's the opposite direction. So when you see them on that track that goes around their ball, they probably stopped at one end and then shot it the other way and brought the lighting down the other direction to shoot it back this way. It's just hilarious. I mean, when we look at these things in today's world, in today's eyes, and we see what we're capable of today, and we realize that that is the very best that they could do in 1969.
And it's starting to show up. It's a good point you make there, Scott, that with today's knowledge, today's technology, we can dissect what we're looking at from Apollo, which is over 50 years ago. And we can see that there are anomalies within the Apollo images. And we can now explain what those anomalies are, how they came to be created. The more we examine it, the more we look into it, the more we find out how much was wrong with Apollo. The apologists, NASA supporters, apologists, get it? Forget it, don't worry. Anyway, what we've got now is much greater knowledge, not just of space travel, though we have got that, but of photography, lenses, filming. I mean, look at the amount of CGI that goes on in films now. Some of it's very good indeed.
It can fool you with such precision now that you're watching CGI and you don't even realize that it's not CGI.
No, just look at that rocket we were looking at yesterday.
Yep.
NASA's new rocket.
Yep.
That was pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Had, well, I don't know what, 40, 50 different engines underneath it, and a big, gigantic engine in the center with a whole bunch of little ones around the outside. And the base of what was 150 feet across or something like that. maybe 200 feet across the base of this new rocket that they've come
When
out with.
Yeah, when it took off, it looked so real. But then all of a sudden, then the CGI kicked in, and then you could tell.
Yeah.
Seems to be happening more and more now. So those who support NASA's story of landing humans on the moon 54 years ago are going to have to come up with some answers.
Mhm.
The Dave McKeegans of this world.
Yeah, like I said, when it comes to NASA, it's on them to prove that they did what they did, and it's on them. If they claim they're going to do it, they got to stop with these delays. There's no excuse for it. Like I said, they claim they've got all this new technology, that they've got this, that they've got that. How many times have they redone the spacesuits for Artemis now? I mean, turn them out to a costume designer. The hell with that. You got the Apollo ones, use them. If you can't remanufacture those things when you've got full examples of them, I mean, those zippers work great, right? They work great in a vacuum. You don't need to do anything else. You can reproduce those. They're just zippers.
Yeah, and they protected them from the radiation as well.
Exactly. Except X-rays. They don't work with X-rays. You can see right through them.
No, that spoils the effect, because NASA claimed to have created all this equipment in just over 7 years, from a standing start in 1961 to landing on the moon in July 1969. They created all the equipment, all the necessary technology.
Put the buildings up first. Make the equipment to build the rocket and have all of that done. Amazing, isn't it?
It's extraordinary. And now, what was the date that the first return to the moon was going to be announced? 2014, I think it was.
Something like that.
Yeah, and here we are, nearly 9 years later, and they've just about got a rocket off the ground to orbit the moon. That was Apollo 8 did that, but it had humans on board.
And it had better cameras.
Yeah, it had cameras, and Artemis didn't have anybody on board, hardly had any cameras on it. Launched at night, so we couldn't see a lot of what was going on. And how long has it been? That was December last year, December 2022. When's the next launch going to be? December this year, we're told.
Right in the middle of the solar flares that are going on. The solar flares are increasing dramatically if you look at it. They're on a daily basis.
I know. I mean, you hear reports of people seeing the northern lights quite regularly. And in Canada, you could probably see them regularly.
Like if you have no clouds in the sky, you can probably see them anywhere in Canada. The last one I saw, they were getting beautiful displays in New York City. Over and above the lights of the city, you could still see them. That's amazing when you can see them that far down. And of course, these are going to keep increasing until they hit their peak at 2025? And they think they're going to go and do something?
But Apollo went at the same sort of period of that solar cycle.
Yeah, 71. Apollo 16 was right on with the solar flares. And they don't even talk about them.
Well, they don't dare talk about them because enough people know what solar flares can and cannot do. And they're dangerous things. If you get an X-class flare, those are very dangerous things if they hit Earth, as you saw in 1989, where a lot of the electric infrastructure was damaged quite severely.
Like I said, if you're looking at the solar flares and you actually go to the NASA site, where it has the scintillation, the drag of the satellites and that because of the billions of tons of material that's actually coming off the sun, you will see so much contradiction between the articles that are in there and how severe they are. And they describe exactly what happens to power grids and lines and everything else. They excite the lines and they boost the power in the lines and just simply burn them out. So if you have an electric motor that's running, it's already under power with load, and then you can just dump a whole lot more power into that, right? Because it's exciting the outside magnetic field around an electrical device, right? So the power grid has an electromagnetic field around it. That's what the solar flares are exciting, that, which transfers directly into the machine, right? Whatever it is, or the power lines or whatever that's doing that. And that's all very well described in there.
Yeah, because NASA have looked at it.
They have looked at it. And so that's in direct contradiction to anything they claim that is traveling out in space. because those things aren't affected by it all of a sudden. If they've got satellites beyond the Van Allen belts, which are going to take an incredible amount of punch compared to being below the Van Allen belts, and those satellites are being affected. If they can harden them that well, with absolutely nothing stopping it, then why can't they protect everything on Earth? There should be nothing, because then you've got the atmosphere as well coming down, right? That's stopping even more. But if they can protect it on the outside of the Van Allen belts and there's no effect on the machinery, then why isn't that being used here? Why isn't it being incorporated into our power grids? And don't tell me there isn't enough money, because I'm sure the power grids worldwide have enough money to buy whatever technology they need to protect them.
Because if they started doing that and it became public knowledge that they were hardening the power grids against the effect of solar particle events, people would immediately start asking questions and say, well, didn't this occur during Apollo? Well, people like us might start asking those questions. Didn't this occur during Apollo? You had a major solar flare in August 1972 between Apollo 16 and Apollo 17. Didn't that affect anything? Why are you suddenly protecting everything now?
The reason why they're not protecting it is because they don't have the technology to do it.
No, they don't. No.
And NASA's claiming they do. That one that's headed to the sun, they claim, oh, we've got that all hardened and everything else. Well, send that technology out. Don't tell me there's not enough money, because the hydro grids to repair damage costs a hell of a lot more money than it would to harden them, if they had the technology to do it.
Well, it's unlikely that they will, because if you look at the ridiculous performance on the power grids at the moment with all these unreliable intermittent supply systems, they're called eco-crucifixes, windmills, or solar panels manufactured in China, and they've got to protect those as well. And the power grids can't handle the variation in supply. Well, they can handle it up to a point, but not easily.
Well, that's the design of a power grid. Power grid has a single output source. A large generator or nuclear power plant or whatever is designed to have a single power source providing the power out there. It's not designed to have all kinds of little ones in there. It wasn't designed like that. They have to redesign the whole grid to be able to handle that. Like if everybody had solar panels and it's feeding into it, kind of thing. It's not designed for that. They can handle a little bit of it. But when you go to the windmills and it stops working, right, for whatever reason, or the wind's not blowing, you have to have something to replace that power. And a nuclear power plant cannot just be turned on like a light switch. It takes time to bring it up to speed. Even a coal-generated one, to bring it up to speed. The only one that would work more viably is if you had a power plant like Niagara Falls or something like that that's producing power. If you're producing the power, you just alter the direction of the water off the turbines. Oh, no wind, just redirect the water and you've got it right there. It'll bring them up to speed fairly quickly. But at the same time, the water's flowing there, why waste it? Yeah.
It's a brilliant system. It was one of the first systems that Nikola Tesla worked on, the Niagara Falls power. And he did a very good job there. He was the guy who invented alternating current, which is what we use today. One of the geniuses of the 20th century.
Of course, then this Giga guy is claiming that we're banning all of his comments that he's posting here. How many times have I told these clowns that I don't ban anything? It's Google, it's YouTube. Go complain to them, not us, not me. I didn't do it.
This 100 gigaparsecs guy is the one that was talking about the 60 millimeter lens being 47 degree angle, and that the Earth was in there the 23 times across, so it's the correct thing. So I responded to him and I said, the math that you said that it is the reason why the image is so wrong. How they got like a little tiny Earth, right? NASA is claiming, because it's on March to the moon, that it's a 60 millimeter lens.
And by the way, I like this. Hey, Alan, what about the other living organisms on the Zond 5? Those despite the tortoises. Yes, you don't mention those because it would destroy your silly claims. Hey, Apollo detectives, the communications training satellite was not geostationary, and because of the speed it moved across the sky, none of the tracking stations used for the missions could have moved quickly. ...
It's very good news, you know, very good news, because more and more people are looking at it, beginning to ask the questions. So the more publicity we get, the better it is. So keep posting, guys. You know, if you can spot errors in what we say, go for it. Do whatever you like.
I like this comment here by Taft Decker Baker. He said, I asked NASA for a job, but they told me there's no space.
Oh dear, oh dear. How did NASA know there's no space?
Quite the pun.
Yes, no, it's good, that. It's like asking NASA for a job and you get never a straight answer. Dear, oh dear.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
so, you know, keep posting, you know, all you anonymous posters. Why do you have to be anonymous? What's so frightening about putting your real name up there or even your real photograph? What's so frightening about that?
There was one guy that was claiming himself to be an absolute authority on everything, except when you clicked on his little page going back, when you click him up and pull it, he accidentally had a couple of videos of himself. And you got to see it. This is Mumbling 2.0, this guy. Living in Australia in a trailer park, pissed out of his mind, laying on his bed, picking on a guitar. This is this guy. And he claimed he's going, oh, smart. I'm so much smarter than you, sport. I thought it was just mumbling, putting himself up in a different name. But the videos are actually up there of this guy. And he's just pissed out of his mind. Laying on a bed, picking on a guitar.
Yeah.
And I came back and I made a comment to him. We watched your videos. We looked at the comments underneath your videos, and then we laughed. And he goes, I don't have any videos up there. And then he goes back and says, oh, I guess I do. Oops.
That's why he has to be anonymous.
He's that same kind of authority that Mumbling was. Oh, I'm so much smarter than you. You know nothing. This 100 gigaparsecs guy, though, and when he came back and claimed that it was a 60 millimeter lens on that particular photograph, and he did that right away. Well, that's on March to the Moon. It's the only place where you're going to see, like underneath the image, what the lens was. It was on there. So in a response, because he kept copying and pasting anybody that was talking about the small image, and he kept saying, oh, well, it's the correct size. It's the correct size, right? He did the math, you know, it's 47 degrees across and you can put 23 Earths across there, right? They're 2 degrees, right? So I put a link to an article underneath there that describes all of the different lenses. What a wide angle lens is, from 20 to 35 degrees, 40 to 60 degrees are considered normal lenses. It describes the 50 degree as being very much like what you would see with your eye. And so 60 degrees, the Earth should look slightly larger than what you would see with the naked eye. And that's not apparently in the photograph. And he's going, well, what's wrong with it? I did out the math. And I said, well, that's how, when they faked it, they got it so wrong. They used your math. 47 degrees, and it's 2 degrees, the Earth is 2 degrees across. But that's not what you would see with the naked eye.
That 47 degrees is the angle of view of the lens.
Of the lens.
It's the amount of picture that it will take. It's on the Hasselblad, which is a medium format camera. It's a 60 millimeter lens. That's the focal length of the lens. 47 degrees is the angle of view that that lens has. Can be a little bit confusing, but we'll try and get it sorted out. But that is more or less what you will see with your normal eye view. That's why it's called a normal lens, because it's the normal view that a human would have. So if the angle of view of Earth from the moon is 2 degrees, yes, it would fit 23 times into a 47 degree picture.
Well, that's what he did the math out. Yeah, it's a little tiny Earth.
Don't you think NASA would have done that as well and got it correct? Because if you're going to put a picture of the Earth into a photograph taken with a 60 millimeter lens with a 47 degree angle of view, you'll know that it fits 23 times across in that image. It's not rocket science, it's basic optics.
except it's a little tiny Earth.
Yes.
So it's not a 60 millimeter lens that they were using.
No.
And this is the point. It's a little tiny Earth. It should look the same size as what you would see with the naked eye. And he still doesn't get that.
No, exactly. When you use a 250 millimeter lens, which the Hasselblad cameras were fitted with on occasion, the Earth will appear much larger in the image. Of course,
And they're still too small.
Yeah, it's still too small.
A 250 millimeter lens, I showed that, I guess, in the last one we did that was the Apollo 11 photograph on the orbital one.
Yeah.
That's a 250 millimeter lens. And it's very close to what you would see with the naked eye. It's a lot closer than the other one with the 60 millimeter lens. It's still a little too small, but it's closer to what you'd see with the naked eye. So that should have been a 60 millimeter lens shooting that, but they're claiming it's a 250 in that image on March to the moon. And that's where the discrepancy is. And that's what this gigaparsecs guy just doesn't understand.
Again, the question arises, why do they have to use anonymous names? Why are they so frightened that they can't put their real name and real picture up there? We do. I mean, we're here. You can check us out. Our pictures are all there. Our names are all there. So what are these guys frightened of? Is it that they could be shown to be wrong? Maybe one of them is Phil Platt or Neil deGrasse Tyson or Bill Nye the Science Guy. Maybe they're all trying to get in on the act, but they don't dare show their faces because we just say, okay, if that's what you think, answer this question. And they wouldn't be able to do it.
That is a problem for anybody that comes on that is anonymous. They come out, they make a blatant statement. It's not just an opinion, but they're parroting somebody else. It's not even their opinion. They're just parroting somebody else, right? And when you challenge them on that, they either go away or they start swearing at us.
Yeah. As soon as they do that, we know that we're right. We know that they're wrong, but they don't dare admit it. And they can't be seen to be wrong in public because all their groupies will turn on them and they'll get nobody to support them. Oh dear, how sad.
Like this other guy says here, it's kind of funny. He says, time 2:03. Marcus Allen's glitching. I don't believe that you guys are really reporting from the moon.
I know, it's just hilarious that he said that. You have him down in the little corner, right? Us in the corner. Yeah, that's hilarious when they pick up on stuff like that, right?
See, the funny thing is that a lot of people will pick up on stuff like that, exactly. But they don't notice that. Look at the junk that's laying there in the background. I mean, what's that? That looks like an Easter basket or something. I mean, that's not supposed to be there.
Yeah, I know. You drop all kinds of stuff and they don't see it.
Well, obviously we entertain a lot of people, which is good news. And we inform a lot of people because there are quite a few people who support the position that we've taken or that we take. But there are quite a few people who don't. And the more that they object to what we say and try to criticize us, to show us up for being wrong, the more we demonstrate that we're correct, because they just don't follow through on it. And anybody who uses anonymous names, gigaparsecs and all that, where's he coming from? How many people know what a gigaparsec is even? Come on, explain yourself, Mr. Gigaparsec.
He must be watching Star Trek or something.
Oh, too much Star Trek. That's a good series, that. Wobbly scenes and all. Yeah, the original Star Trek is worth watching because that's what got a lot of people interested in this whole story. They were being shown before Apollo happened, 66, 67, somewhere around there. So people had got the idea of space travel. Now, Gene Roddenberry, who was the creator of Star Trek, he had a lot of good information, which he tried to get across in this series. He tried to get it across as fiction. It's actually proven to be more real than we could have imagined. Some of the technology he was describing. He's an interesting character, Gene Roddenberry. Of course, in Star Trek, they didn't really explain the problems with vacuum. Maybe they didn't know very much about it then.
Oh, I was watching a 1950 science fiction show. Here these guys are. They take off. And all of a sudden, no, these guys still, no, they're not floating, nothing. Then he says, as soon as we reach between the moon and Earth, you're going to start to feel weightless. And then all of a sudden, one of the straps kind of floats up and the other strap, and a harmonica floats out of the guy's pocket, pen floats off the table. It's just funny the way that they did things back in those days, you know.
Because they hadn't worked out how it actually worked.
No.
They thought it worked. Maybe NASA spent too much time watching those old films and thought, well, we can do it better than they. But they got things wrong. Oh dear, oh dear. Never a straight answer.